Hello everyone, and thank you for attending. My presentation today will be about the trends that we're seeing in the digital workplace. So it means that in the next hour or so, I will take you through some of both the emerging trends, but also some of the trends that may have been around for a little while. I will not talk a lot about technology, which may come as a surprise to you since this slide says that I am from Microsoft, which is true. But I will talk more around how technology is used and what are the opportunities that it provides both today but also for the future. Before we move along, let me just start by introducing myself. My name is Martin Risgaard Rasmussen. I am based in Denmark. I work, as I said, for Microsoft, where I am a customer success manager for Office 365, covering the Nordic region, that is Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. Previous to my role at Microsoft, I was working for some of the largest companies in Denmark. With the only thing in common, or the thing in common there, is that it was all around online communication and change management. So it means that I have a lot of experience from this area around intranets, enterprise social networking, but also in terms of leading change. I'm also a charter member of the Change Agents Worldwide. And some of you may have seen me or heard me in other conferences around Europe. A few words about Microsoft. Our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. It may sound a little bit like a very big mission to accomplish, but nevertheless, I think it's a very bold statement to put out there. And the fact that we say on the planet is the most important and interesting idea in this statement. We care about these things and we really want to make it happen. And this is also why we are here, and hopefully we can give you some great, or I can give you some great input. Also, you have probably heard about mobile first, cloud first from Microsoft. This is what we're all about. And by utilizing this, we are trying to build the best-in-class platforms and productivity services. But again, I won't spend a lot of time on these slides. This was just a bit of background around where Microsoft is today to make sure that we all share the same picture of that. October 21st, 2015. What is that date all about? It's only a couple of weeks away. So why am I all of a sudden talking about something that is just basically a few weeks away? Maybe this picture will ring a bell. Well, it's actually the date that Marty McFly flew to in Back to the Future 2, and in that movie I remember it vividly because I wanted one of these things. It's a hoverboard. So when we talk about trends and we talk about the future, sometimes we tend to go a little bit overboard and dream a little bit. It is of course okay to dream a bit, but I have been listening to trends and activity-based internets and what all the things that has been coming, and especially like stuff like the activity-based intranet that has been the talk of town for the last 6 years, and we're still discussing this transformation. So the trends that we are seeing today, they may not be as radical as you might think. Will there ever be more hoverboards? Unfortunately not in this presentation. Well, the world is now one big network. This is probably not new for you out there. But as a matter of fact, networks are nothing new. We've been building and developing networks throughout history. And actually the longest standing network still in existence is the Central Commission for Navigation of the Rhine. And it was founded in 1850. So it is more than 150 years old, which is quite impressive actually. It was basically created to regulate the travel on the river Rhine. And that was kind of the way that people worked in the 19th century. And it was the predecessor for postal unions, telegraph unions, telecommunications networks, and so on. So But what does it mean for productivity, really? Well, making things, it has always required having the right tool at the right time. Today we use tools built with software, and with the right software, any device can pretty much become the right tool, and any time can become the right time. So harnessing all of this is really, really important, especially when we move to a world that is more cloud-based and also much, much more mobile. If we look at today's graduates or today's students, they paint a very interesting picture of what the new world of collaboration looks like. They have grown up within a world where they have not known a world without the internet. Some even say that they have grown up in a world without knowing social networks. Personally, I think that's a bit of an overstatement, but regardless, if you look at the way they interact today and the way that we interacted when we were starting our careers, it's vastly different. It doesn't mean that they are that they don't need to spend time on learning. They still do that. They just learn in a different way. If you think if some of you were around this area when we were working with SharePoint 2007, the normal way to learn that was a 3-day classroom where you sat down, you had instructor take you through how this works. And if you think about how you learn new software and new technology today, well, you sit down and you watch maybe a 5-minute video on some kind of streaming service, maybe on YouTube, and yet you still think that these videos, they are quite long. Did the platform change? Not really. Did our approach to learning change? Yeah, it actually changed quite a bit. And this is the future that we need to adapt to, because the students of today and their way of learning, their way of collaborating, that also has a huge impact on the companies, because in the end they are the future employees. So what does work look like today? If you ask our grandparents, they would paint a very, very different picture of a working day than you and I would do too. We have instant messaging pinging you, not all the time, but maybe a little bit more frequent than we would like. We have meetings, of course in meeting rooms, but we also often use Skype. We use remote meetings. We spend a lot of time co-creating documents, sometime in real life or in real time, so to speak, but also just sharing things back and forth. We share things with, well, everybody basically, not only in the company, but also outside of the company. So if you look at the knowledge workers of today, it's all about collaboration. Technology, it has made time and place less important as long as we're connected. We still have to deal with time zones, especially in international organizations, but the truth is that work, it is collaboration, and it makes it so much more important that the collaborative environment that we use, it just works. Not just from our offices, but also from our virtual office that I sometimes like to regard the digital workplace as. But again, it's a matter of definitions. A word that I think is really important that is underused here, maybe because for non-native English speakers, it is a bit of a tricky one. Ubiquitous. It means that collaboration is quite literally everywhere, and I think this is the important point with this slide, and this is also something I'll get back to later on in my presentation. So if you think about that, how is your organization then put together? Is it still a hierarchy like it used to be? Or are they networked just like our customers, and just like, well, I guess many of us in this session, we may not know each other, and maybe we do anyway. Of course, this is a bit, it's always an interesting construct since this is a virtual session, so I can't see you. But my guess is that there are more than one person out there who I have met, if not in real life, then at least virtually. So you can map it out like a network, but in our organizations we are not networked in the same way. We still use the same control and command and control networks that we used to have. If you look at studies, there are studies that suggests that 20% of a worker's day is spent looking for information internally, and I think that's actually scary. So when people can't find information that don't feel connected to the company goals, well, they begin to feel disengaged, and that's a whole bigger problem. And hopefully some of the collaborative stuff that we have available that is a solution and not a part of the problem. Ideally, that's how it should be. If you look at how that I mentioned that 20% was spent internally, but McKinsey did a study a few years ago, and this one says that 61% of the work during a week is spent on coordinating collaboration. Think about that for a minute. Just take a minute and reflect on it. 61% is spent on coordinating collaboration. Personally, I think that's scary. It's not scary that we spend 61% on collaboration. That's awesome, because we need to collaborate even more, I think. But the fact that we spend 61% of the time coordinating the collaboration, that's the scary part. Surely there must be room for improvement here so that we can spend more time on actual work. Combine that with another interesting study from IDC, also from a few years back, that says that we are not just collaborating with people in our organization, we also collaborate in almost 2 out of 3 times. We are 2 out of 3 minutes, if you can call it that. But 66% of the collaboration time is spent working with people who are not in our organization or who are not nearby. When we think about nearby, I don't know if you are familiar with the study that says that when you are more than 30 feet away, you are much less likely to talk to another person. So that's also where technology, it cannot overcome that obstacle completely, but it can at least help. So by using the right tools at the right time for the right purpose, you can definitely also make this time more efficient. Again, the number itself, should it go up, should it go down, it's really a matter of what you want to achieve and not the number itself. So what is the outcome? In the end, to what this really emphasizes is that work is no longer where you go, it's what you do. I don't know who coined this phrase, but I have liked it ever since I heard it the first time. Even though that there is really no center on this this phrase, it doesn't make it less true. So work it's no longer a place. That's the key here. And to emphasize that, even Harvard Business Review a few years ago, they made a study that showed that 60% of all desks in an average workplace, they are actually vacant at some time. So if you really can work from anywhere, what is then the role of the modern workplace? Before we go into the trends, let me just leave you with one final quote from our CEO, Satya Nadella. And another quote that is really spot on, and in all of this abundance of technology and possibilities and collaboration, what we're really running short on is human attention. We live and work in real-time information environments, and in this environment, this is really the limited resource. So nobody can offer you more time, but the way we spend the time can definitely be more efficient. So we're shifting from an old world to the new world, and world where information was scarce, something that you really had to look for, to a world where you have information everywhere, you have information at your fingertips. We would like to think that we are shifting from static hierarchies to dynamic networks. The hierarchies are still there. They're not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it seems like we are trying to make hierarchies something that is not a desirable thing. But as a matter of fact, this is really where you make decisions. That is still the case. Whereas the networks, they help you get your work done. It helps you become more efficient and really to achieve what you set out to do. We also talk about individual productivity before. If you think back to, or not like personally think back, but in the age of industrialism, it was all about how much can the individual really produce in a given period of time. Today, it is more focused around the value that we create together, and it also emphasizes the fact that we need to focus on the collective value that we can create. It also emphasizes the importance of experimenting, learning, and also responding to rapid change. Something that is also a very important topic in this area. So what about the trends? We have the 3 trends. I will take, or four trends actually. I have added another one. So let's have a look at these. The first trend, the title itself is taken from a book I read some time ago. It's called Business Network Transformation. You can see a link to a page about the book itself down below. And the first trend, I have named it Expanding Periphery, Shrinking Core. Right now you may be thinking, what is he talking about? But yeah, I will show you. If you think about the digital workplace, maybe if you think back, let's say 10 years, what were you thinking? Well, you were probably thinking something along the lines of this, that you needed something around communication. That would be your news. You needed something, the idea of connecting to other people, it had started to emerge, maybe in the shape of a phone book. You also needed a collaboration environment. That could be team sites, it could be some kind of groupware. And you also had a number of transactional solutions like self-service things. And those were the 4 basic components. Search, it could be in here. I don't see it as a component. I see it more of a feature that really permeates all of these. That was the case 10 years ago. It is still the case. But it's not included. Just the fact that it's not included here doesn't mean that it's less important, but I really consider it as a key enabler of the framework itself. But if you think back 10 years ago, what were you trying to achieve? Well, you were trying to build the one place, the one-stop shop, or however you would call it in your organization. That place was probably called the intranet or the portal or something else. But the key in this is that it would be the one place, one place where you could get everything done. This is a great aspiration to have. It still is if you have it, but if you think back 10 years and just look at the time going by, what you were trying to build, you are trying to build the one that could really stop everything, do absolutely amazing things. But in reality, instead of building the one, like this one in the picture right now, you ended up with this one. We tried to use it for good. We tried to build it to make it better. But as it turned out, it slowly started to consume itself. Maybe because we couldn't quite keep up with the pace of the change around us, but it could also come from a multitude of other reasons. I'm sure you're making your own lists in your head, so I won't bore you with all the details. Instead, I'll offer my view on how the digital workplace of today looks. First of all, I think that it's important that we recognize, and this is also true for Microsoft, that there is a world outside of SharePoint. There is a world outside of Microsoft. So if you look back just a year ago, actually a little less than a year, Microsoft and Salesforce they unveiled the first new joint solution. It was at last year's Dreamforce, and at this year's Dreamforce they even announced some tighter integrations. Would this have been unthinkable before in the, let's call it the old Microsoft, before the cloud came about? Well, maybe not. But the fact is that if you look in a recent press article about Microsoft's presence at the launch of the iPad Pro and the other new products that came out of Cupertino, so the first words in one of the articles read, "Did pigs just fly?" And to me, I think it says it all, that we are in the world, and I think Microsoft is also starting to realize that there are more things than just our own technology out there, and there are more things that people they use. So what does it mean for the digital workplace? Well, this in particular, not a whole lot, but if we think about how we should structure our digital workplace, I would like to think about it, think of it like this. The basics are still the same. The components are still there. We still need somewhere to communicate. We still need somewhere to connect. We still need somewhere to collaborate. And we still need some place where we can do our self-service things. Communication, today it's more than just news. It's something where you expect more dialogue. You expect a different type of communication than you did, say, 10 years ago. If you look at the connection piece, the connection is no longer about making the connection through, for instance, a phone book or calling somebody up. It's also about how can we strengthen connections? How can we build our internal equity, you can almost call it, or our internal network? And in the end, that leads to the next bit, and that is the collaborative part. So who can we collaborate with? What can we collaborate on? Do we have the right tools for that? Transaction is always a bit of the red-haired stepchild, but it's no less, it's very, very important, because this is the one function that, if we look back on the development, has shown that of intranets and digital workplaces, that show that this is the one that drives people to use the solution that you have built. So it is still hugely important. But what about the intranet? Well, I put it in the middle, and I put it as a very, very small circle. Not the all-encompassing one place, because clearly that didn't work, and there's no reason why this should work in the future. Instead, we will have a number of different things, but we will still, different components, but we will still need to bring it together somewhere to make sure that it's easy to use, it's easy to access. That could be it could be in a SharePoint portal, it could be somewhere else, it doesn't matter hugely. The fact is just that we are looking at this hub in the middle where you go. So you will probably only find 20% of all the information on the functions available in your digital workplace on this component called the intranet. But it's not a big problem, because it will address 80% of the needs that people will have. The tools we have in the 4 boxes, they are specialized. So if you are a specialist, well, you will probably spend your 80% in one of the areas. That's fine, but at least you know where to go to find it. This is the way that we work at home. We may not know where everything is, but we have a central system or a central way of organizing things. And I sometimes think about when I think about this idea of having one tool that could solve everything, kind of the end-all tool, I can't help but think about my dad. He's a retired bricklayer, and if I would even try to get him to understand the notion of a tool that would do everything, I know that I could spend, well, from now on until Christmas and still not succeed, because he knows that's not the truth. That's not the truth, and I know that that's not possible either. So why would it be possible in the digital world? Maybe it is, but I would say it's probably one of the areas where you will spend a lot of time fighting an uphill battle that will be very, very hard to win in the end. So why is the traditional intranet, why is that failing? As I mentioned, yes, we try to build the one place, and we also set out on the right path towards the digital workplace, or the more integrated solution. And that was great. The problem is that we came from a point in time where the intranet was made up of news, it was made up of the lunch menu, and some other, pardon me for saying so, but very low practical things. Then we crafted a new project or something, and we set off on this journey. For the professionals working with these solutions, this was a fun time, and that was really, really inspiring. But what we may have failed to realize is that we somehow abandoned the users on that road, because they knew what to go to the intranet for. It was for news. It was also for the lunch menu, for all those things. And they may have been critical towards that, but I don't think that they perceived it as being not valuable or not relevant, because they kind of knew what to expect. They knew that there would be more comprehensive solutions out there, and other opportunities. But still, it was kind of okay. More often than not, on this journey, we didn't get all the way to the right in this, to the digital workplace, or the fully integrated solution that many aspire to build. And that was really a shame. So we are kind of stuck in the middle, where we forgot about the real purpose of why we are having these things, and because we forgot the purpose, well, it means that the value becomes harder to realize. So what I'm trying to say with this model is that when you're thinking about your digital workplace or your intranet, if for that matter, is make sure that you keep some kind of focus. Either you focus on one extreme, that is to solve a very specific business issue, and maybe have several very specialized apps, if you like, or you try to bring some more things together and create a more coherent digital workplace where you have a more integrated approach. Whatever you do, don't leave the things half-baked. People, they sense that, and it will definitely rub off on the perception, both of value, but also on the actual usage of this. Trend number 2. This one says something about bring your own device. It sounds a little bit like something we heard about in 2008 or something, and you are absolutely right about that, maybe even before that. But I'm actually saying goodbye to bring your own device, because this is really not important. Why are we talking about bring your own device anyway? Well, in the end, it was first of all because all of a sudden we had all these devices that we could get to go, that we could connect to the internet, phones, tablets, even some modern laptops, and they were all better than the stuff that we got from work. And so essentially, bring your own device. To a large extent, it has nothing to do with productivity. In some cases, and I would argue that in many cases, it's the IT departments who have thrown in the towel and acknowledged that they simply cannot keep up with the development. So the easy solution is to let people bring their own devices to the workplace, and then find out a way that they can use their devices to work on for work. And that's actually back to my point, why it doesn't make any sense to talk about bringing your own device. In my world, it's about how can we access information, and not about the devices themselves. You can also argue that bringing your own device, some argue that would lead to a better work-life balance. I think that's completely bleep. But instead, if you can make sure that you get access to the right information at the right time, you may be able to work from other places than your desk. You can work from home, you can work from anywhere, and that would essentially make it possible to make the work-life integration more easy. Work-life balance, is there such a thing? That's a discussion for another day. So what does the future hold here? Well, if you think about it, you have a ton of devices. These are just some of them. You have a laptop, you have a tablet, you have a phone, maybe at work, maybe at home. You may have a watch. It could be a Fitbit, it could be a GPS tracker. I personally have one of those things for when I go running. You have your TV. I just bought a new TV, which is smarter than I thought. For the first time, I've had to upgrade my TV. So hey, there we go. And wearables is something that is also really making great progress in the world. So these are all the devices that I use to stay in touch with the world around me. Some monitors me while I'm doing something. Some are for leisure, but they all have one thing in common. They paint a very clear picture of me and who I am. On one side, I have my life. That's, as I mentioned, that's my Fitbit, or in my case, my GPS watch that tracks what I'm doing when I'm out for a run, or if I go for a walk, if I take my bike and go downtown instead of my car. I can also use my phone or some other device. I check in on Foursquare or on Swarm, on my favorite restaurant. When I'm done there, I order an Uber because I had a glass too much. So, and all of this, it leaves traces. Some of these are deliberate, some are less so. Some are less so. On the other side, you have your work. This is what I do every day. This is my meetings that I attend, the people that I meet with. It's also my documents that I share. Some I upload to various solutions. My presentations, like this one I'm sharing with you. Right now, I have uploaded that to my SharePoint, to our team's SharePoint site, so that I can share it with my colleagues. That also sends a signal that I am interested in the digital workplace, and the fact that I have been here. It's also all the other things I do, plans, customer meetings, and all these things. Essentially, it is the information about myself and my place in the organization, and all I do in a day's work. So if you combine the two, this is all about you. But this is no longer a 9-to-5 world. You can learn to rule your technology, and you can also learn not to let it rule you. Some of us, we are still struggling on the last bit, but at least we are trying. But when it comes to staying productive, you need to access both your work and your life from anywhere and at the same time. You should not care about where you are and how you access the information as long as you're online. Coming back to my point about bringing your own device, this has absolutely nothing to do with bringing my own device. It has everything to do with the promise of the cloud, and it is the ubiquitous access to information if you're online, of course. And this is actually what employers today, they need to deliver. Even if they can't, they still have the aspiration of doing so. And I hope for everybody that it will happen for all of us. Office 365 is of course I need to highlight that in this part. It is one way of doing it. We have apps designed for all these things, and you can download them to any device. These are quite obviously Microsoft devices, but they are also available for iOS devices and Android devices. And just to mention a few numbers around how this is, just to emphasize this point, is that you can see that we have 100 million Office for iOS downloads already, also for Android, and 500 million Skype for Android downloads. So it is actually pretty impressive, and it shows that, again, coming back to my earlier point about Microsoft living in the real world, I'm not saying we are fully there yet, but we're definitely on the right track. A small thing that I shared, a small slide I shared a while back. This is actually a real life example of what of Office 365 Anywhere. It was a campaign that my team started. We started tweeting about it, and this is pictures from one day of me, basically of my workplace for an entire day. I started from home. I took the bus to go on a train, and then in the end I flew to Stockholm and for some meetings. And these are all the places where I did some actual work. So in the bring your own world, you made more conscious choices, as it implied that you were bringing your own device with you, also to work. But if you all of a sudden can work from anywhere, then everywhere is potentially also your desk. You need to manage this, and this is also important for your manager, because he or she will need to manage this as well. So it's of course about practice, but it's also about setting the right expectations, because it's not really 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever your working hours are. It is quite a bit more complicated than that. In the end, this is all about trust, and I know for a fact that my globally distributed team, we are about 60 people scattered all over the world. If we didn't have a high level of trust that the work that we need to do actually gets done, well, this would lead absolutely nowhere. So from my own experience, it's also a bit of a caveat that the fact that we can access everything from everywhere doesn't mean that we have to access everything everywhere and all the time. So make sure that you also build that into to any initiative you may have around that. Some coaching around how do we make sure that people don't burn out and don't get overloaded in this world where we all of a sudden can access everything from everywhere. The third trend that I will take you through is, I labeled it from technology-centric to people-centric. It hints at some of the same themes that we have talked about, that I've taken you through earlier. And some of you may sit out there and say, hey, Martin, that is not a trend. We have seen a lot of this already. This is what we do right now. And I will say you are absolutely right. We're all striving for this, but are we there? Even if we're there, there are still things that can help increase the relevancy. Our old way of thinking about personalized experiences, it still struggles with the notion of relevance. I know that we have come part of the way as a community, but there's still a way to go. And I think that this is where technology can help examples. It may not be mature enough just yet, but some of the promises that we're seeing on the horizon is actually really, really interesting when it comes to our personal productivity, and also from the ability to make solutions that are more people-centric and centered around a specific version of SharePoint. A great example of this is the Office Graph. Some of you may or may not have heard of it. If you have, I'm sorry, then it will be a little bit repetitive. If you have not heard about the Office Graph, well, then I will talk you a little bit about this for the next few minutes. So why we're talking about a graph, this has nothing to do with a graph. Well, the graph theory is actually from the 1700s, and if you look it up, you can actually check out, there's a good entry on Wikipedia about the 7 bridges of Königsberg, and it is basically where the entire idea of graphs come from. Graphs is how we connect to information, how we connect to people, how we connect to the world around us. Some of it is conscious, some of it is built by the way that we engage with both people and documents. Some of it comes from the structure, who do I report to, who do I work with, and something is a little bit more subconscious, like if I like other people's posts, if I view other people, or if I just look at documents, I leave the traces that I talked about earlier in this presentation, and in the end, this is all combined, and this builds my personal graph around me. So, if you look at the Office Graph, how does that really work? Well, it pulls signals, as it's called, from the stuff that you do. It pulls signals from the Office apps that you know, but it also looks at your exchange. Who sends emails to you? Who are you emailing a lot with? It looks at your SharePoint and what do you have there, in SharePoint also the public parts of your OneDrive. It also looks in your Yammer, see whose comments do you like, who are you working with, and in the end also this says link, but also this should obviously be Skype for Business. But it also looks at Skype for Business and see who you have frequent conversations with. All of this, before you start thinking about privacy and what's happening, are they spying on me? It's very important for me to emphasize that all of this happens with full respect to any kind of privacy setting that you have. So if you have a document, for instance, that is not shared with anyone, well, nobody will be able to find it, or it will not show up in your Office Graph, or in somebody else's Office Graph even. But this leverages the machine learning, and it also leverages the power of the cloud, where we all of a sudden have a lot of, let's say, extra power to do a lot of calculations and a lot of things, and analysis. And what it delivers back to you is a very, very interesting picture. The first that is actually available now. It is called Delve. Some of you may or may not have heard of it, but this is built fully on the Office Graph. If you think about if the construct of Delve is a little bit abstract for you, think about it this way. I mentioned the Office Graph and how it works. So if you think about all the signals that is populated into the Office Graph, it builds a picture. It is as correct as it can be right now. It's of course dependent on how much you share and how open you share it. But when the algorithm in there looks, or these signals, they form a picture of who you are as a person. So based on that, a tool like Delve, it will surface information based on that knowledge or based on that algorithm. So you will see stuff that is relevant to you. As a good example, I was on summer vacation this summer, and I came back and I went to my manager and I asked the question, as you normally do when you've been away for 3 weeks, so what did I miss? And he looked at me and said, what do you mean? What did you miss? I said, well, something must have happened. I've been away for 3 weeks, so don't tell me that everything's still the same. And he told me, well, go check out Delve. So Delve. Oh right, yeah, that new thing. It was just launched before summer. I wasn't really aware of it until summer, to be perfectly honest with you. And then I went in and I took a look at the information that was surfaced to me there. And I read through some presentations, and I thought, okay, this is really nice, this is super relevant, so maybe he has a point. I went back and said, all right, I checked Delve, so that's good. I feel I have a reasonably clear picture of what really happened. But I still said, okay, but can we please sit down and just talk through some of the things, because I'm not sure that I got everything, and I was still a little bit hesitant. It turned out that this is of course an estimate, but I would say that based on the stuff I got out of Delve, I got about 70% of the knowledge that I needed to catch up on after my summer holidays, just from looking at my first page in Delve. I think that's pretty impressive. And if we can get people to share more, and if we can get people to spend more time building their graph, I'm fairly certain that this will be the new way of personalizing information. And I think I wouldn't say, I'm not using the word revolutionize, but it will definitely make us think differently about how we work. Another thing, and this is very recent, as you can see from the date stamp, it's from September 3rd this year, where Microsoft, we have announced that we are to acquire a company called Volumetrics to empower individual and drive organizational productivity. This sounds awesome. But I took a look at this Volumetrics, and this is a screenshot from their website where they are showcasing one of the solutions. And this is your performance dashboard. And if you look at it, there is one called Total Time Collaborating. That's actually really, really fascinating. First of all, when I look at this, I was joking at one point and said, hey, why don't we make a Fitbit for productivity? And I think this comes pretty close. This is tracking what you do, and it's tracking almost why you do it. Is it a bit scary? Yeah, it is. If you're thinking, yes, I'm with you, I'm there with you. But I'm also sure that just like me, you are feeling this slight tingle in the back of your head or down your spine, like thinking, yeah, there are some scary elements in here, but there are definitely also something that is really, really interesting. When we are talking about tying it back together, when we're talking about how we can make sure that we have a more people-centric approach. Being people-centric is also about making sure that people are relevant, and this will actually help improve some numbers. It can also be used as a big hammer to chase people with, but that's only when it's done wrong. If you use this right, I'm fairly sure that this will definitely be this will be very interesting. And I, for one, am really excited about what the future holds for this in particular. The last trend that I will spend a bit of time on in this presentation is this one. It is a little bit different. It is more emergent, and it is basically around the importance of leadership and the organizational structure. Again, this is one of the trends where you may say that this is it's a bit of stating the obvious, and again, I'm not disagreeing with you, but what's fascinating here is that we are seeing more and more evidence-based studies that these are indeed the key success factors. And when it comes to these things, emergent or not, well, if we just go back a few steps, think about the hoverboards. I didn't promise you any hoverboards, so and I promised to deliver on that promise. That was a lot of promises. So again, this may be obvious, but some of the findings here, I hope that you will find them very interesting. I don't know if you've noticed it, but when you listen to some of the leading companies in the intranet digital workplace area, you may have noticed that they have started to use some different words if you compare to what they did just 3 years ago. Words like scenarios, use cases, visions, they were not that common. Maybe vision, some of the more the more advanced companies, they were talking about having a vision for the internet or having a vision for the digital workplace. But talking about scenarios and use cases, this is definitely something that has been on the rise for the last, well, basically very few years. The findings that I'm sharing with you, or the survey that I'm mentioning, is called the Digital Workplace Trends. It has been published for 9 years running. It comes out once a year. There is a link at the very bottom, and I know that if you're interested in participating in the 2016 edition, go to the website and there's a form where you can sign up, and then you'll be notified when you can see, or when you can participate, or when the next year's survey opens. The first picture here is in my view one of the best models or frameworks for explaining what the digital workplace is all about, or what you need to be conscious of when you are talking about the digital workplace. It basically breaks things down to 9 dimensions: leadership, culture, and asset. That is all about the mindset, and this is about how can we manage the digital workplace. This is where the governance of your intranet/digital workplace it sits. If you look at the enablers, process, structure, and reach, it's of course about making sure that everybody can access it. Again, we're back to the point about access and not about the devices. It's also about finding out how you can support, this one calls it virtual operational units. In Microsoft they're called V-teams, virtual teams. It may be called something else in your organization, but no matter, these are the components where the project work gets done, and this is typically one of the areas where something electronic it can really help you. Of course, then you have the processes. That's back to the transactional piece of the digital workplace model that I shared with you earlier. Then you have the capabilities. Something needs to be individual. It needs to be for me. We're back to the personalized things. We also need to look at how business gets done, and of course the cooperation and collaboration across the organization. So, and at the very center, you have people, the organization, and the various tools that is being used. So, as I said, I think that you may find this model a little bit high level, but I think it's a great place to start if you need to start talking about a new digital workplace. So, but what about the trend? What about the organization and leadership? Well, from this year's survey, I will highlight a couple of things. I talked a little bit about purpose earlier, and if you look at this year's findings, the organizations that state that they have a strong shared sense of purpose, they have some very interesting tenets. They don't have, well, if you look at the ones in the red box, competing priorities, it's not, the correlation is not strong. But if you look at the especially around slow decision making and consensus based, and the lack of senior management sponsorship for the digital workplace, it is I think they are strongly correlated, as well as the politics, that if you have a strong shared purpose, then you are more likely to be able to move faster, or at least spend less time on internal discussions than you would if you only have a weak purpose. Is this really important for the digital workplace? Yes, because one of the decisive factors here is to have a very good governance. If you have been working in this field for, let's say, more than a year, and you have never heard talk about governance around intranets or digital workplace, you are a very special person, because this is by far the most important component to make sure that you are successful. And I guess that if you look at this, if you can't answer the question, where are we going as a company, then you will find it very, very hard to set a direction for many other things, and that includes your digital workplace. It's all about having the right vision, and basically it's also about having, and I know now I'm deliberately becoming a little bit philosophical, it is to have the right answer to the question, why are we even here? As I said, yes, philosophical, but nevertheless, I still think this is hugely important. And the findings here is, I would almost call it fascinating, because it just highlights how important something like having senior management buy-in and sponsorship, it really is. Another thing is that it's really, really important to acknowledge that there is a world on the outside. I don't know if you remember the slide I showed you with the network versus the hierarchy. Um, and I think this basically shows why it's important to focus not single-mindedly on one of the factors, but it's definitely important to stay open and stay curious if you are serious about changing things. So it's really about, are we focusing on the machine, like are we closed around ourselves and we only try to improve what we do in the way that we know, or are we actually open to looking more at what the machine really does and what others can teach us in order to improve. The second point in this red box, it almost speaks for itself if you ask me. It's not that the tool is not important, it's just that if you focus only on the tool and not on the people using the tool, you will find it very, very hard to improve. You will immediately, or you will very quickly at least, find yourself bogged down with a lot of stuff that doesn't really bring a lot of value not to the organization, and certainly also not to the people that you are trying to support in getting their work done. So, and I'm just coming back to this one, go big or go home. So why did we end up in the trial of the traditional intranets at the first place? I shared part of the explanation with you before. Another explanation or potential explanation, it could be that you got sidetracked by all the features. Remember the 80-20 rule. You cannot make everybody happy when you are looking at your intranet, so you cannot solve all the problems. So focus on the 20%, the 80%, the 20% that 80% of the people they need to use your tool for. Don't get bogged down with a lot of new shiny features and new shiny toys. They can be fun to work with, but in the end, it is extremely important always to keep in mind what is it that they do, and at the end of the day, do they add value to the solution or do they only add complexity? One of my favorite quotes is actually spot on in this, and it's almost a quote that I live by, and it is that if you don't know what you want, you end up with a lot that you don't, and that is pretty much accurate for this description. The last point from the survey I mentioned, there's a link at the bottom where you can read a lot more around a lot more findings. And this was one that fascinated me the most. Maybe it's because of my background in the change agents worldwide, but nevertheless, I found it hugely fascinating that in traditional organizations, change agents are listed as the most important factor for driving successful change. Let's just leave it at that for just a second. The most important factor. It's the behavior of your colleagues and it's the change agents. If you look at the early adopters, and in this sense, I should add that the early adopters means that these are the ones working who moved to the digital workplace way of thinking, if we can call it that, first, and as such are the leaders in the area. The change agents are all of a sudden, well, they are in the middle, so to speak. They're not hugely important, they're not completely irrelevant either. That's where the purpose comes in. You really need to know why we're doing things. But the change agents, it's really fascinating. I know maybe I sound a little grandfather-like, know-it-all, but if you think about it, if you don't have the change agents, well, and if you are in a more traditional organization, go get started, because you really need them. You need these pathfinders or champions or whatever you would call them. They're not necessarily the same people who you have appointed as your intranet editors or your or whatever roles you may have. The key here is to find the green dots. These are the believers who believe in change, and this is where you may have some work to do. But remember that this exercise, although it may take some time, it should be a fun one, because you are actually looking for people who share your passion or share a passion. If you do it right, you will build a great team. You will build a coalition who can go on this journey with you. And I don't know if, but I think we have all tried to travel. If we have all tried to travel alone, let's assume that we all realize that it's much more fun to travel or to be on a journey together with somebody else. So alone can be fun, but having somebody to share everything with, that's even better. And the same thing goes internally in the organization. If you're trying to get something done, it's more fun to be part of a group where you kind of feel the energy rather than just having you and maybe a colleague who are fighting a battle that seems almost like, yeah, Don Quixote trying to fight something that can't really be fought. So, and to wrap up this trend, I would like to share the tie this back to Microsoft's approach on how we talk about becoming successful in terms of implementing new technology on driving change. This is the four-step approach that we advocate. It's very important that you make sure that you understand the business goals. You also understand the challenges that people have, but also that you actually create a vision. This one says envision, and the vision part here, or the envision part, contains the idea of creating a vision for your new solution. What is it that we're trying to achieve, and why are we doing that? Then it's of course about designing the right thing, and then we come back with, and as a third step, you need to make sure that you know how to drive adoption. That's where your super users, or where you are champions, or pathfinders, or whatever you call them, where they come in. They are very, very important in order to make sure that there is the right drive. And in the end, also make sure that you put some thinking into when you're a success. There are plenty of benchmarks and KPIs out there that is very interesting to look at, and that can give you some inspiration. So, but having the vision, making sure that you have your change champions out there, those are probably the most important steps in this. And of course, your executive engagement, but that lies implicit in having the vision, because if you can't get senior support for a vision, well, chances are that you will not be successful. So to recap the four trends, first one, expanding periphery, shrinking core. Well, think about this as the intranet. It is your dashboard, it is, or your point of entry. It is not the one place where you get absolutely everything done, but it is the one place where you will find links, or where you will find a lot of the tasks, a lot of the things that you should care about in your daily life. Number two, it's not about devices. I'm sorry, even though that we would all like the newest version of whatever, or the newest edition of whatever, it is really about access. If I can access information, I need to access information from anywhere at any time. So if I can do that, we don't need to talk about bringing your own device anymore. Number three, from technology-centric to people-centric, it's all about the people. And if you're still thinking about what the technology really can do, and should we do this, and do we have this feature, well, begin to think about it this way. Does it add value, or does it add complexity? And that's seen from a personal point of view. So make sure that you involve your users. That's the only way to truly make a solution people-centric. And in the end, pay close attention to your organization and your leadership. Make sure that they're on board. If they're not, well, you have some ideas on here where to focus. You may also have an idea why progress is slow, but regardless, it's definitely something that you need to focus on. So with that, I'm almost out of time. But before I leave, I would like to challenge all of you. These trends, they're already here. Some are more emergent than others. So go home or hang up on the call and think about, where do we really want to go? Are you stuck in the world of, intranet world of 2007, or are you actually using the new opportunities that we see and that we have available? You have seen some great examples throughout this event, so it can be done. It may not be easy, but it's definitely a battle worth fighting. If you have heard all of this before, great. I wish you all the best, but I hope that everybody got a little bit to think about from this session. And with that, I'm going to leave you with a couple of links, and I will say thank you very much for attending. If you have questions, comments, or reflections, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find my contact information at the bottom here, also in the beginning of the slide. So thank you very much for joining, and have a great rest of the day.